Hi everyone, my name is Bill Bass and I am here representing the Google Educators Group of Eastern Missouri as we get back to school. And I hope if you have started back to school, I hope you're having a good beginning to school and that your kids are back and they're ready to go. And if you haven't started school yet, I hope that that's coming soon and that you're on your way. One of the things that I really think is important as we begin this school year, and as a part of the Google Educator Group for Eastern Missouri, we really focus on how we can use technology for kids and use that in the classroom. But really, what it comes down to is it's as important for us to prepare kids to walk out of our classroom as it is for what they do when they sit in front of us. And that's really what we're here to talk about tonight. We're here to talk about digital citizenship. We're here to talk about how to be safe online and how to really spend our time and our energies in making it so that kids understand that it's not necessarily what they do when they're sitting in front of us. It's not necessarily what they do while they're at school. It's what they do when they walk out of the classroom. And as educators, sometimes it's hard to keep that in front of us, and it's hard to keep that really focused on where we are. So tonight, I want to welcome you to Beyond Facebook and how to keep your kids safe online. And right now, I'm going to turn it over to Patrick and let him talk a little bit more about where we're headed tonight and what we're going to do.
Yeah, so my name is Patrick Dempsey, and I'm a 8th grade science teacher in the Gateway City, and we're just going to learn and discuss a little more about how do we as educators help our kids be safe, help our students be safe online. Kids are bringing all kinds of devices now, and there's one-to-one, there's bring your own device, and so there's all of this stuff, but do kids really know how they are being represented, how they're representing themselves, how do they respect themselves online? This was a big conversation that I got into in the first couple weeks of school. So one of the featured speaker we have here tonight is Janelle Patterson, and Janelle is an entrepreneur in the St. Louis area, and her company is Frenity, and it is a great platform just for schools, teachers, parents, and kids to have conversations together and to get communication out. So check that out at Frenity, Frenedy. Sorry about that, Janelle. But
That's okay.
Here we go. Here's Janelle. And Janelle is, like I said, she's an entrepreneur, but she's also a mom. And so she's seen schools, and she knows both sides of, what is it a little bit on the educator side, but really she's on the parent side. So Janelle, take it
Thanks,
away.
Patrick, and thanks, Bill, both of you guys. Yeah, I wanted to spend it with everyone tonight talking about how to keep your kids safe online and maybe share some experiences that might help you educate perspectives, because I'm not an educator, but I am a parent. I have 3 teenagers, and I'm still living to talk about it. My kids are a junior in high school, a freshman in high school, and then I have a 7th grader as well. And I'm going to tell you a little bit more about my company, but I want to share with you some other things first. I've had the opportunity over the summer to address different groups of kids, and I would say the age groups I've spent the most time with are probably age 12 on up. And these kids were from collectively over 90 schools over the late spring, all summer to now. And what I found out was a lot of things, and I think this can be very helpful for you guys to kind of bear in mind, and that's that there really isn't a solid program in place per se across the board for schools to talk about digital citizenship. And we really shouldn't assume as parents or educators that everyone knows what digital citizenship is. I talk to teens who've never even heard the term digital citizenship before. And what I've found out is that as much as we as adults understand what we should do and shouldn't do on social media, they don't. They grew up with social media. They've written their own rules to it, and I'm shocked if they don't know. I think it's on us as parents, as educators, to help them understand that what they don't know can have lifelong consequences. And what I found out was they don't, for the most part, most of these kids really don't know and understand how permanent everything is online. An example of that is I have a close friend who is a special agent for NCIS. And if you've watched the show, yes, very, very cool. Yes, she's got amazing experience. I'm in awe of her experiences. But she was telling me, matter of fact, we had coffee this afternoon, and she was telling me that she had a time where a teenage girl had sent naked pictures of herself through, I don't know what form of social media, and the boyfriend put it out to his world. And when they finally, when this actually got to NCIS, and she was sitting down with the mom and with the girl, who was both a distributor of child pornography as well as a producer, the mom's thought was, well, just take it down. Just get rid of it. Just take it down off social media. And my friend said that, it's not that easy. The minute it goes out, it's everywhere. If it gets tweeted to 1,000 people or even 400 people, then it goes to their friends and their friends. So I think that what kids underestimate is the permanence of every single thing that they put online, and the fact that it can come back and haunt them 5 years down the road, 10 years down the road. They also don't know what makes up a social media profile. I have an advisory board of all teenagers. And I asked them this, and they know because they've worked with me long enough, but I asked a lot of the kids that I worked with over this summer, what do you think a social media profile is? And I always get, well, it's my Facebook page, or it's my Twitter handle. And it's so much more than that. And kids don't necessarily understand the fact that it's everyone they friend and follow. It's everyone who follows them. It's everywhere they've been tagged and people they tag. Everything that they post, they share, they regram, they retweet, it can all be found. And what it all boils into is their digital resume. And while we all had that ability to create our own resumes on paper and pick and choose what we wanted to highlight about ourselves for competing for scholarships, getting into college, getting into jobs, our kids don't have that luxury. And what they don't necessarily understand until somebody lets them know that is that everything they do online is public. And while it's kind of cool and fun to feel like you're internet famous and maybe you've got 1,000 followers, there's inherent danger in that as well. And kids sort of equate popularity with how many followers they have, or how many likes, or how many favorites they have. And what I've found is that popularity and privacy are pretty mutually exclusive, and I'll talk a little bit more about that. But the other things that happen is that their brains just don't think about these long-term consequences of what they're doing today. They also have sort of refined cyberbullying. So we all know that cyberbullying is out there. It happens a lot. And they've refined it to where now they're doing subtweets, or they're doing shaming and things like that. So even a subtweet, as innocent sounding as you're really fake, I see those types of things. It's directed at someone without naming that person, and supposedly that person is a follower and knows who they are. Subtweets are wildly popular with teenagers, and the only thing it does is make that person who tweeted that look bad. So what ultimately I try and tell these kids is this. You are your brand, and you have to, from the minute you get online, from the minute you set up that first Instagram account or Facebook or Twitter or Snapchat, whatever your preference of public social media is, you have to remember that's your billboard. It's your radio station, your TV station, and it is public. Everything you do is public, and it's your brand. And what happens is you need to use social media, or what I recommend to kids is use that social media to your advantage. Stop and think about it through the filter or through the eyes of a scholarship committee looking at what you just posted, or a college committee that, or admissions committee, admissions workers looking at what you just posted, or that employer that you want to go to work for. You have to stop and think about everything that you post in that realm. And I tell kids, if you're thinking about, if you're mad, don't post. But if you want to use social media to build your brand, think about it in this perspective. Think about, what's your passion? What do you love? Do you have a sport that you love? Do you love theater? Do you love horses? Do you love tennis? Whatever it is that you love, those are the types of things that make sense to post about. Make it positive. Talk about what inspires you, what moves you, what makes you tick. Because a few years down the road, when that scholarship committee is looking at you, or the admissions counselors, or the employer, or even the employer of the ice cream stand that you want to work at up the road, when they look and they see those types of things about you, you're going to stand out. But yet, if you are competing with somebody right next to you for the same scholarship, and you're the one who's been tweeting every 5 minutes of the day about something that is not very productive, against someone who is posting and tweeting about things that they're inspired by or things that motivate them, who's going to get that job? Who's going to get the scholarship? Who's going to get that place in college? And anywhere between 31 to 35% or 37% of colleges these days are looking at the social media profile. And while it's not a national standard, not every college goes out and combs through the social media profile of everyone who applies. A big chunk of them are, and we should assume that all of them are. And the bigger issue is, if you don't have a clean digital footprint, and if you have put a lot of useless information out there, or silly, goofy things, or even mean things out there, or inappropriate tweets or posts, those are the things that can cost you thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars. You can lose a spot on a sports team. You can lose that scholarship. You can lose that job opportunity. All you have to do, if you want to see examples of this, they're all over the place. All you have to do is go out to Google and Google something like examples of lost scholarships due to social media, and you'll find lists and lists of that type of thing. But I really show kids about the fact that there is a human behind that avatar, and that a Twitter handle or a username is a human being, and you have to stop and think about that. And I think as an educator, to encourage kids to say to them, look, whatever you think about tweeting or posting, don't do it unless it's something that you would be completely comfortable standing up in front of this classroom right now and telling everybody to their face. Because what goes on behind a keyboard, it's so much easier to type something in when you're typing at a faceless user ID, and they have to stop and think that they're actually posting to other human beings. And the thing, too, that I really try and drive home to kids is the difference between public social media and private social media. So public social media would be your Facebooks, Twitter, Instagram, Snapchat, you name it, references. And those are the tools that you can use to build yourself up, to build that positive brand. But I also recognize that there is a need for teens, for classrooms, for sports teams to communicate things that they wouldn't necessarily want to publish on that public TV channel or the radio station that's completely public. Things like, team pictures, or maybe experiments that you're doing in a science class, or goofy, fun pictures with friends that you don't want to plaster out there for 1,000 people to see. Those are types of things that make more sense and that are more appropriate and well suited for private social media. There's not a lot of private social media out there. Frenity is one of them, and that's essentially why I created Frenity. Frenity is actually the first private group networking application that's suitable for users of all ages. So originally, when I started down the path of creating Frenity, and I'm not a coder, I don't have a highly technical background at all. I have a business background. But when I went down this path, it was because of an incident that my oldest daughter had with Instagram that was terrifying when she was 11. And it was terrifying for me as a parent, and it was also terrifying for her. And I will tell any of you out there who are listening, their parents, just a little bit about this experience. When she was 11, she downloaded Instagram and just uploaded some pictures, completely innocent pictures, but attracted a follower, and it scared her. And when she brought it to my attention, because she was scared, I started taking a look at what she was doing on Instagram. And I realized she didn't have any privacy settings set at all. And a lot of these kids don't, because they don't take time to do it, or the privacy settings change so much it's difficult, even difficult for someone who works in the industry like me to understand the privacy settings for all the social media. So if you're a parent, you need to stay on top of that. But the thing that was even more alarming to me when she was on Instagram and when I was really checking out who she was following and who was following her is there were a couple of accounts that were following her. One was promoting self-harm and another was promoting suicide. And I was stunned that kids are exposed to when they're out there with social media at a really early age. That's why there's a law in the Privacy Protection Act that requires kids to be 13 before they have their own social media account. But I know, as well as you guys know, that's not the case. 50% of kids already have a social media account established by the time they're 10. By the year 2020, it's expected that over 90% of the world's population, age 6 and up, will have a mobile phone. So we know these kids are online. And I needed to create a platform that would put parents in the driver's seat so that when those kids start asking for the Instagram account, there's another alternative where a parent can set them up on an account and then guide their usage and set up the standards by which that child can use the social media. But what ended up happening as we developed this platform, we discovered that there's, with the proliferation of information in the public social media world, there's a huge need for privacy and for stripping out some of that information that you wouldn't want broadcast to the entire public and putting it somewhere else. And that's really what Frenity is designed for. So we've found that there's a tremendous use for it in schools, whether it's classrooms to collaborate and to allow parents sort of a window into what's going on in a classroom, whether it's a sports team for putting all the photos out there from the last game or from practice or just silly, goofy photos or from camp. Those are things we don't want on public social media at all. Definitely things we want to share within that private group, as well as managing the events. So practice schedules, game schedules, all of those things can be done within Frenity. So other types of groups that Frenity is very popular with, parent groups, moms groups love Frenity. It makes so much sense. Sororities are big users of Frenity, and families and study groups. Study groups are good because they can collaborate on whatever a project may be. It's a safe place. Somebody makes a mistake. They don't have to worry about something being shared or retweeted or reposted or being embarrassed if they do make a mistake, because it's in a Frenity group, what happens there stays there. It cannot be shared with the wrong group. There's no hallways between groups, and you can't see anything about a member in the group other than what they choose to share with the group. So that's a little bit about Frenity, but I typically try and focus my message with kids around the fact that let's take another look at what we're doing on whatever public social media you use, and you should continue to use that because it's a huge opportunity to build up your brand and to set yourself up for that next step in your life, whether it's college, whether it's a job, whether it's an internship, whatever that is. Use that. That's your resume. And then all of that other private communication and those conversations that you wouldn't want to jump on the news at 5 o'clock and talk about, that's where Frenity comes in. It's completely off the grid, off the Google radar, and it will not show up and haunt you 10 years down the road. With that, I also have, I wanted to make one more comment. I have put together a list of resources, and I know that they'll be available to anyone watching, but I want resources that are helpful to educators and helpful to parents. Some great websites that are clearinghouses for internet safety, and that can give parents the lowdown on which apps do what, and how to set up privacy things, and some really good blogs out there that offer some great, valuable content. So I know that those will be available as well. Anyone is, of course, welcome to sign up for an account at Frenity. It is completely and with that, I can turn it over if you guys have any questions.
Cool. Thank you so much, Janelle. Yeah, I really like the idea behind what kind of brand are you promoting for yourself? And I think that's a huge piece, especially as our children get older, as our students get older, and as they take that step back. It's our step forward into a job, into college. And all I can say is I'm thankful. When we were younger, the things that we did as a kid. There wasn't Instagram to show those things around. So it's a completely different lifestyle now, and definitely that's a great point to think about with what kind of brand, what are your passions, what do you want your social, internet world to say about you?
Right.
Yeah, and kind of just to piggyback, I know you, and just to talk about Friendly for one more second, I know you guys just released an iOS app, so
we did.
That's great. It's on my phone already, so that's fantastic. Yes.
Thank you. Yes, so. It's in the App Store. The Android one is underway. It's just not in the store yet, but the iOS app is there, and use it, have fun with it, and then of course you can always go online to www.frenity.com and use the web station there as well.
Cool. And we'll be sure to put all those resources in the YouTube page and on our Google Plus page, so everybody has access to those resources.
Great.
But I was going to open, with Bill or Patrick, do you guys have any questions that teachers may think of, ask? That Janelle might be able to help with, on that.
No, I mean, I was just thinking about what I have done so far with my kids this year, because we are fortunate enough to be one-to-one with laptops this year in my classroom, and so kids are, taking laptops to school, bringing them home, and so I did talk about. I put up this quote on the board at the beginning of the day. Everyone is a marketer, and I asked them, what does that mean? If a marketer is someone who sells something, what does that mean to you? And they're like, oh well, if we wear a brand of clothes, we're selling that brand of clothes. If we wear Nike shoes, we're kind of selling Nike. Or some of them even got so far as like, well, if we like a brand on Twitter, then we're kind of saying that we're selling that. And we finally got to this point that like you are what you're selling, and you are that brand. And so you ask kids, what do you think of when you think of McDonald's? Well, I think of the arches. I think of hamburgers. What do you think of when you think of Nike? When you see the symbol, you think of shoes. And so, what are people gonna think when your name pops up in conversation? Are they gonna think of pictures that you've posted? Are they gonna think of your profile? So, what is the conversation look like when your name pops up in it? And that was a really just rich conversation with kids, and we went through some different scenarios and kind of we did a, what does red behavior look like? What does yellow behavior kind of could go bad behavior look like? And what is green, kind of in the online world? So that was good. It was good. And I'm
That's
now
a great
gonna have to,
exercise.
Yeah. So I need to go check on my daughter. I'll be right back.
No,
So
that's
Janelle,
a great exercise, and not to cut you off, Bill. I'm sorry. I
no,
just
it's all right.
wanted
It's all right. No.
What a great conversation starter. I can't imagine if I was an educator to put up on the board, everyone is a marketer, and then have these kids stop and really figure out what that means. That's huge. That's huge. And really even parents should be having that conversation with their kids as well. What do you think people say about you if all they knew about you is what was on social media? That's a really important conversation to have.
Yeah, you know what? I absolutely agree with you, and I think that's a great tact for Patrick to take. Just to begin that conversation. One thing that I would ask that if you could, Janelle, if you could kind of talk about a little bit with those that are joining us tonight, or even in the future. So we know, Greg and I and Patrick, we all kind of live in this technology bubble that, we use it, it's part of our lives, it's part of what we do every single day, and it's something that we, like, truly, I'm one of those people, if I leave my cell phone at home, I turn around and go back and get it. It doesn't matter where I went at some point during the day. Yeah, I mean, that's how it is. But I know that that's not where everyone is. Everyone doesn't lead that life and isn't, quite as dependent upon those things. So, and I know that as I talk to educators, a lot of times they feel like they can't have that conversation because they're not users. They feel like they can't begin to even know what to say. And I think that parents are the same way. I don't use social media. I don't use the Twitter. So how does that work for me? Where do I even begin to have a conversation? So if I were a parent that wasn't, or an educator that wasn't as immersed in technology as I am, what would you tell me to begin? Where would I begin to have that conversation with the kids?
Very fair question, because my kids would tell you I know nothing about social media and Twitter, and I don't know how to use a hashtag, and I'm not cool. So I get that. I live in the world that is, while I will turn around and get my cell phone if I left it, because it's an appendage at this point, I completely get it, because I don't imagine I'm in this industry, but for a parent who just doesn't even have a Twitter account, or my best advice would be this: in the resources that Greg is going to put up, start there. There are some really good, it's not a long list of resources. I try to keep it short because I'm really familiar with all the resources in there, and some of those blogs and sites are phenomenal. As a parent, all you have to know is enough to have the conversation. I think there is nothing more important than just being engaged, and I don't think that not knowing Twitter or not knowing Instagram is an excuse. We can't be intimidated by what our kids know and we don't from a technology standpoint. What I would encourage anybody to do who's in that situation is read those blogs, read some of them, understand what a digital reputation is, what that means, and understand what digital citizenship is. Because if as a parent you don't, you're missing out an opportunity to help your kids be successful. And you're missing an opportunity to prevent them from making some big mistakes. You don't have to be an expert in Twitter. You don't even have to have a Twitter account or a Facebook account or any account. Just understand the fact that the resume that you had on paper isn't at all the resume that your kids have. And I think you owe it to them to just be able to kind of ask questions and have the conversation, and even ask them things like, so Johnny, if, I know that you've got these social media accounts, what do you think that the teachers would think about you if they saw everything that you do on social media? Or what do you think that people, any people, not just teachers, people would say about you if all they knew was everything that's out on your social media account? And having the conversation with safety and about their future and how it's going to impact their future, exactly what they put in social media. You don't have to be an expert in Twitter, Facebook, or Instagram to be able to have those conversations. You certainly shouldn't be afraid of that. If that makes sense, if that's helpful at all. But I certainly don't know all the social media out there. I know it, I'm just not an avid user of all of it. But it doesn't stop me from having those conversations with my kids about some things they have tried to use that I.
That's great, and I think that one of the things that, as I think about teachers and just think about what you were just talking about, one of the things that I think is important for teachers to understand is that just as you were saying, they don't have to be the expert. They don't have to be the one who understands every single thing about what to click on. It's the same with any technology. I do like you were saying, it's just don't be intimidated by it. I think that's a great way to phrase it, is don't be intimidated by the technology, and don't be don't assume. I also, here's the other thing. I also don't want people to assume that somebody else is having the conversation.
Yes, because it's very rare that that conversation is being had. All of these kids, hundreds of kids this summer that I have talked to, so few have ever been in a position where someone's had that conversation with them. Sometimes they're parents, not all parents, sometimes they're parents, but I was absolutely, probably about 90% of the kids, of all of them that I've spoken with, completely didn't understand what their social media profile is, or the fact that everything that's out there is permanent. They don't know, and we think that they're so proficient. They're these super high-tech, proficient kids. What they don't know is what we do know, and that's the impact it is.
Yeah, that's a great point. What what they don't is what we do know, and I always kind of laugh. You don't know anything, Mom and Dad, but I mean, we've lived it, we've experienced it. So, it's hard for them to believe that, but I think they see it. College hits, and they're like, oh, I guess my parents do know something. But that's great advice. There is to have those conversations, have that opportunity to talk to them about what does this look like. What kind of reputation are you leading online, and is it the same reputation that you live in our non-digital lives? So
that's right.
That's great.
That's right.
Cool. Well, I think just Bill and Patrick, if there are no any questions, I think we're going to go ahead.
I think one last thing I was going to add was just, maybe the teacher is not the expert on the social media or whatever, but you're an adult and you've represented yourself in multiple different ways. It's no different online. It's a whole lot more permanent, and it goes out to a whole lot more people. But you have represented yourself, and you know how to represent yourself appropriately. Kids don't.
That's right.
And so if you as the adult in the room could offer advice to a kid on how to represent yourself, what would you say? That's really a digital citizenship conversation that every adult can have with kids.
I agree. I think that's really critical, and I think, like, when you say how you represent yourself and communicating to them that the way as adults today, how we represented ourselves, completely different medium than what they've got now, and how they represent themselves now is so much more public, and they have to stop and think about the fact that if they're mad, if they make mistakes today, those will haunt them in the future. So they just need to be so intentional about what they put online. But and even it's a proven scientific fact that the brain isn't fully formed until age 25. Scary. But a lot of the filters that we have as adults, kids don't have till they're 25. They don't have those inhibitions that are natural to us. And therefore, that's what gets them into a lot of trouble online. If we all just think about what it would have been like if we had Twitter when we were 14 or 16, scary. So I think that we do need to, back to your point, Patrick, we all have been able to represent ourselves.
Yeah.
Now it's up to us to figure out how to help our kids with that and to not be intimidated by the technology they know so well, because we know a whole heck of a lot more about the consequences of that technology than they do.
Yeah, and you know more about representing yourself than they do. And just that wisdom alone and those mistakes that you've made can benefit kids. So
yes.
Cool. Well, thank you, Janelle. Thanks for being here and sharing with us, and some great advice for teachers. So a couple of things to be aware of. So in 2 weeks, September 13th. So I hope I'm telling that date right.
You're right.
All right, perfect. So September 13th at 8 o'clock, we are going to do a very similar Google Hangout with the same topic, except we're going to be focused on parents. And I know I'm already ready to go make sure my friends on Facebook and other parents and friends are aware of this opportunity, because there's going to be some great information from a parent standpoint of some things to take notice of, and just keeping your students safe online, your kids safe online as they get older, and this may be a new adventure to you, especially as your students jump in. So 2 weeks, definitely want to jump into that. We'll also make sure we put all the links to the resources that we've been referencing into the YouTube page and on our Google Hangout page, and Google Plus. So the resources are there. And the very last thing, if you are an educator, on October 10th, there's a great opportunity to learn just about all things Google in the St. Louis area. It is the Missouri Summit featuring Google for Education. It's going to be at Liberty High School, which is in Wentzville School District, on October 10th, and we'd love for you to participate in that. If you would like more information, it's gafemo.com, and on there you can find out information and register to be a part of that event. There is a fee. It's $80, but that'll get you lunch, breakfast, and some great day of learning. So thank you all for being here, and like I said, we'll hope to see you in a couple weeks, and as we join and talk to parents.
Thanks, Greg.
Thanks.